You guys, the Zodiac series is done. It's done. It's been 3 years and 8 months and 24 paintings, but I can finally be a person again. Now, obviously, I've done tons and tons of other paintings along the way, but the Zodiac series to me is the most clear-cut, almost documentary about how over the years my art has progressed, but also how my painting process has evolved. So today I thought we'd go back in time a little bit and take a look at the very first painting of the series, the Dark Aries piece, and compare it to the very final painting of the series, which is the Light Pisces piece. And not just look at the two paintings in comparison, but also take a look at how my process has evolved over the last 4 years or so. I mean, I'm not even the same person I was in 2020, so this is going to be a massive eye-opener. We'll look at the speed paints for both the first Aries piece and this new Pisces painting, and compare and contrast how my process has changed over time, and hopefully this video inspires some of you guys who might be an early stage artist to push through the boring learning phases so you can eventually get to the really fun, expressive, experimental phase of art. We're gonna have some brutal honesty today, some personal development, and of course lots and lots of art. So if you're excited about this, then make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. Comment below if you've been following this art series with me and how you think it has changed over time. And of course, come say hello on social media. All the links are in the description below. And now, without much further ado, here is how the Zodiac series has changed over the last 4 years, and more importantly, how it's changed me. Let's first look at the two paintings side by side, because I feel like there's some very important differences in the end products themselves, starting with the render quality. I feel like the overall render quality is much higher with the Pisces painting, and I think one big reason for this is that it actually looks like a painting, in that it looks like it has character, there's carefully chosen stylization, and lots of hand of the artist details. With the older Aries piece, it feels slightly less well thought out and a little more impulsive, which is honestly very on brand for Aries energy, so you know, it works with the law. But things like colors and textures feel a little snapdash. Clearly the focus was mostly on trying to nail that perspective and fast pace. Next, there's the textures. With the Aries painting, a lot of it feels a little too smooth, a little too digital. I genuinely can't think of a better way to describe it. It's too many smooth gradients. Even the bits I know I painted by hand, like her skin and the characters in the back, feel a little too smoothed out. There isn't that delicious, crunchy looking grit that you see in the Pisces piece. Now that could very well be because we started the Pisces painting with those digital oil brushes, which the video is up here if you haven't watched that, but it just feels more alive, like the textures create a lot of character in the painting. And finally, let's talk about the colors and lighting. This is where I feel I've improved the most, because the color story in the Pisces piece definitely feels way more grown up and nuanced, whereas the Aries piece is a pretty simplistic orange and blue palette. The Pisces painting, while also having an overall orange and blue theme, integrates more hues such as greens, reds, and purples, but in subtle ways that don't take away from the major tones or temperatures. It is just a more well-rounded color story, which is an improvement I am definitely very proud of. But now let's get into the meat of this video, which is all about the painting process itself. The biggest shift in my painting process over the years has been the switch to painting in Krita. I used to paint exclusively on Photoshop, mostly because Krita wasn't quite on my radar until Krita 5 came out. Now, I know they say that a bad workman blames his tools, and that's true, but I also think that a good workman is often limited by his tools. The thing with Photoshop for me was that it was too digital. Yes, there are artists that can do incredible painterly art on Photoshop, but once I found the shortcuts to create color and lighting effects on there, it was over for me. I started to rely entirely on the digital tools that would make my work faster and more efficient, but that was starting to get rather detrimental to my personal approach to art. I started as a traditional artist. I like to let the painting have its own say. I like the messes and the serendipity that comes with letting the brush take the lead. And Photoshop felt very cut and dry, a little too clean and sanitized, at least when I got to this stage in my art skill. It works really well for artists who function with a specific goal in mind and prefer their software to be a vehicle to achieving that goal. I am not one of these artists. But then about 6 months after the Aries painting, I finally tried Critter 5 in 2021, and it suddenly felt like a massive upgrade. The brush engine is better catered to painting, blending feels a lot more organic, and to me, this feels more like painting, whereas Photoshop felt like pushing pixels around to make it look like a painting. I did a whole video about switching to Critter 5, which is like my 8th highest viewed video, and I truly feel like even though I was going from a premium paid software to a free open source one, it was a massive upgrade. I don't quite rely so much on digital functions like blurring and color gradients because it just feels better to paint it by hand. And much like with the best things in life, doing it yourself is always the best. This is actually something I fully forgot about until I watched the Aries speed paint bag, but that was my teal and orange era for sure. And it was because I'd just done some painting courses by the incredible Hardy Fowler, and that is how he starts his portraits. It's a really neat technique. You start by blocking the silhouette in with a dark teal, and then use a bright orange to place your high points in, and then you color adjust until you have the colors that you need. And what you're essentially doing here is painting your values first and then adding the colors in. But because you're already using saturated tones, it gives you a more vibrant base to work from than just using a grey underpainting. It's similar to how oil painters do their underpaintings with sepias and umbers before painting in the true colors. This technique has really served me well through the years, and I still sometimes think about going back to it, but these days I like to approach my painting more directly. So while I do still start by blocking in the silhouette, I tend to do it in a shadow tone that would actually show up in the finished piece. And now, instead of thinking, okay, I'll do my values first, and then the hue shifts, and then the transition tones, I just go straight in and do it all at the same time. So when I'm picking a highlight tone, I'm not just trying to pick one that's light enough, I'm also thinking about what temperature would best suit that spot, what the surrounding hues might be, how saturated the lighter areas need to be, etc, etc. And then I go about refining right from the get-go. It's a way less structured approach because I don't go step by step anymore, but this is how I'd paint on canvas with acrylic paint. It just feels right to me. That's the whole point about progress though, isn't it? At least when it comes to your art journey, it's important that when your process evolves, it is becoming better suited to how you like to paint. There's so many tutorials out there about how you can paint faster and paint better. And yeah, it is important to experiment with those techniques because you might learn something new. But then take those tips and see how you can tie them into how you like to paint. That is when you really grow as an artist. So one thing that has changed dramatically, and this wasn't something I noticed until I started working on the script for this video, is that I've completely changed the order in which I work my paintings. So looking back at the Aries speed paint, notice how I used to go about the piece. I used to work my paintings one object at a time. So I first did all the pillars and brought them to a near finished stage. Then I did the guy in the background, brought him to a near finished stage. Then I painted the lady in the back and brought her to a near finished stage. Then the sword, then the skin, then the hair, and then the clothes. It wasn't until I got to about 80% done with the painting where I started to think about putting all the different pieces of the painting together and seeing how they would fit and interact with the scene as a whole. This is a very systematic approach, but looking back, you kind of lose a lot of what creates mood in the painting, because you're looking at the painting as little more than just the sum of its parts. The staggered approach makes a painting feel slightly more disjointed, a lot less harmonious. Like, you can tell that towards the end of that painting, I had to do a lot of color and light adjustment to make all the elements fit in together. On the other hand, I feel like what I have now is a much more integrated approach. Instead of dividing the scene into separate elements and then trying to bring each element to 80% and then integrating it all together, I now work on darting across the painting and refining it all a little bit at a time. I found that this allows me to direct the painting a lot better, in that if I want to change up certain details or color choices, it's easier to do when the whole painting is at the same stage, as opposed to having to recolor or relight nearly finished elements individually. Plus, this approach allows me to gradually build up and intensify the mood of the painting, rather than just painting everything to have a generic flat lighting and color, and then slapping a filter and gradient map to kind of generate a mood towards the end. But also, speaking as the actual painter, this integrative painting process is significantly more enjoyable because it keeps my eyes and my brain a lot more refreshed. Sometimes when you render the same area for a long time, not only does it get boring and monotonous, but eventually your eyes get desensitized to that bit, and as a result, you can also miss some glaring errors. Trust me, I've done that too many times. Going around the entire painting instead, fixing things up a little bit at a time, allows you to make sure that your painting is a lot better rounded and free of errors. All said and done though, I think the most important thing that has changed over time has been what I focus on when it comes to my paintings. Looking back, and this isn't to do with the speed paints, just a mental rewind, I remember that my primary goal with my art used to be making it look good. I wanted every detail, every color and compositional choice, all the lighting and textures to come together to create beautiful, visually pleasing art. And that makes sense, especially when you're trying to really build skill. Visual art is supposed to be visually pleasing, and I think I had a very Photoshop-esque mindset at the time, where I had an image in mind and the artistic process was entirely just the legwork of bringing that image from my mind onto the screen. And like I said earlier today, that approach works for so many artists. I mean, it even worked really well for me at the time. But like I also said much earlier in this video, I'm really not even the same person that I was then. And as I've grown and evolved in my inner world, it has transformed everything about my art, at least in terms of the process. Now I work less to make something look nice and more to make it feel right when I'm painting it. Sure, the visual aspects of mood and texture are important, but I find that I'm able to focus more on how my mind reacts to putting down certain lines and marks and colors. And most of all, if I do feel like a certain design choice just doesn't sit right with me, I'm no longer afraid to hit Ctrl-Z and redo it. I mean, as we've seen from the Aquarius painting before this one, I'm really not even afraid of scrapping several hours of progress and starting over from scratch. We've all heard the platitudes about, oh, you shouldn't paint for other people and your art should be for yourself. But over time, I've learned that painting for yourself isn't really about the art at all. It isn't about making an end product that would appeal to you and only you. that's a wonderful bonus, sure, but at least in my own experience, making the end product my main goal has often left me feeling rather robotic. Like I wasn't painting so much as I was printing out an idea that was in my head. Painting, true painting, is about the process you go through along the way. It's about making sure that you're mentally and emotionally present for your craft, even when the canvas is looking wonky and ugly. It is about building a sacred pact with your work so that you can trust yourself to be completely, deeply honest with yourself and stay with the process even if you've had to scrap and start over. It doesn't matter if you're creating original characters, popular art for likes, photo studies, or even commission work. When you've tailored your painting process so that you enjoy every part of it, that is the true meaning of painting for yourself. And that is the deepest, most powerful lesson that I've learned over the last 4 years of working on this series. And now, I don't know what comes next. I'm thinking of maybe trying to find a way to turn the series into physical art, like prints or posters, maybe even expand it a little bit. I don't know yet, and that's the whole point. But in either case, if you've been here since day one, since that very early Dave Greco style study, I want to say thank you so very much, and I'm so grateful that you've been here this whole time. And if you hopped along the way, and you're still here today as well, thank you so much for being here still, and I really hope you've enjoyed this journey with me, and I hope you're excited to see all the fun experimental stuff that can now happen now that the series is over. Also, no matter what stage of art you're at, I want you to take some time today and look back at some of your early works and compare it to where you are today and look at how much you've improved. Even if you're at a very early stage of your art journey, hey, those first few months as a beginner artist are some of the biggest leaps of improvement you will make. So take some time to look back at how much you've improved. I promise you it will be so wonderful and it will motivate you to keep going full steam ahead. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video and this series as a whole, make sure you give this video a big thumbs up and comment below and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any new art content that comes out every single week. Of course, you can come say hello on Instagram, Discord, and Kara. All of the links are down in the description below. And that's about everything for this video. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I really hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. If you're wondering how I built up this current Pisces painting to this stage in the first place, you can check out this video from a couple of weeks ago where I shared one of the hardest lessons that I've ever learned through my art progression. So I'll leave that here in the outro. Make sure you check that out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!